Welcome to the Tara Palmeri Show. We have Miles Taylor on the line with us. Miles was a Trump administration official. In fact, he was the chief of staff of the Department of Homeland Security during President Trump's first term. And well, he didn't become famous because he wrote this anonymously, but in the New York Times, he wrote a piece called, quote, "I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration." And he revealed that there were a number of people within the Trump administration who did not trust him, who were not happy with his leadership, who saw things that really concerned him. And this was very early on. This was in 2018. In fact, I was working as a White House correspondent at the time. I believe I was working for ABC News, and I was getting tips about who it could be, who you might be, and I actually emailed Russ Vought, who is on his second tour of the Trump administration. So it's clearly not him. But I said to him, I asked him if it was him because I had gotten a tip, and he basically told me to F off. But here you are out in the open, no longer anonymous, and speaking out about what you saw and what you know, and what your former colleagues, some of them who joined the second administration, are concerned about right now. And I really wanted to dig into that with you, Miles. Thanks for jumping on. You're such a great resource at this very moment.
At the time, I wasn't talking about a resistance like that on the left. There wasn't a group of people defying the lawful orders of the commander-in-chief. Instead, what I was describing was what I called a quiet resistance. People who were stepping up when the commander-in-chief was engaged in behavior that was unlawful and potentially unconstitutional. Put another way, people who spoke truth to power, which, regardless of what political party you're in, we should all kind of want those to be the type of people surrounding the commander-in-chief, up to and including in the recent Biden administration. And it sounds like there was a point where the Oval Office there became an echo chamber, and even people in the Democratic Party said, we wish more people had said to President Biden the truth of his flailing presidency. And so whether it's Trump or Biden or Obama or Bush, we want those types of people, a quiet resistance around the president, to speak up in moments where the law could be broken, when good judgment goes out the window. And that's what I described at the time. That's also what I believe there is the thin remnants of in a second Trump term. No, I do not think there are full-blown capital R resistance fighters inside the Trump administration, and I really don't think there were in the first administration. But what I do believe is there are, especially in the national security community, a number of folks still inside the Trump administration in this second go-round who are, once again, alarmed at the president's impulsiveness when it comes to matters of war and peace and life and death. And what we are seeing in Iran is a good example of that. Is even people like me, who've long advocated for a much more aggressive posture against the Iranian regime, are worried that they are seeing Donald Trump appear to be making decisions by tweet as this crisis lurches forward, and potentially thrusting the United States into another forever war. And I think that has fragmented the MAGA coalition, and it's meant that there are maybe some people we wouldn't have expected growing a conscience inside the Trump administration and worrying about the president's impulsiveness.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. If you do decide to speak up and say something among a sea of yes men, which tends to happen in the White House. That's why it becomes an echo chamber, is because so many people want to hang on to their lanyards. They want to have, I think it's called walk-in privileges into the White House, right? That's the words. They want to be into the Oval Office. They want to have walk-in privileges. They want to have access. They want to be close to the principal, and so that often stops them from speaking up. And that is the push and pull inside of Washington, where a lot of people come to Washington for altruistic reasons, but get swept up in the power game, right? And in wanting to have influence and wanting to be close to the principals. So it really does take people with courage to really try to present different, perspectives, opportunities. I mean, you're already seeing President Trump icing out Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, who's always been a dove. And she argued before Congress that she doesn't believe that Iran has nuclear capabilities, or at least they wouldn't be able to build a bomb for at least a few years, which is actually consistent with pretty much mainstream thinking right now, although it's really unclear. And she's been sort of iced out in this process. There's some new reporting from the Washington Post that Pete Hegseth has been iced out, probably deservedly, considering a lot of his behavior in the past 6 months or how he's been running the department. But what are you hearing from inside of the administration, from your friends who are still there, about how Trump is deliberating on Iran and what they're concerned about, and if there's anyone inside who is maybe that he's listening to or he's not listening to, or how it's playing out in terms of the conversations?
Well, what's interesting in true Trump fashion, as you know, Tara, the truth ends up coming out from the president directly, and he said something within the past 36 hours that I think was illustrative of how people internally are feeling, which is Donald Trump said, Iran doesn't know what I'm going to do next. No one knows what I'm going to do next. And he was trying to create this element of uncertainty about whether the United States will engage in strikes in Iran or not. But also, he sort of inadvertently revealed the worries of people inside this administration, is that they don't know what the president is going to do next, and
He
that
doesn't
he's
know what
not
he's going to do next. That's the thing.
even worse. Yes,
Yeah,
and
no, he
he
wants
doesn't
to
know
see
what
if he
he's,
can bring Iran to the table, and it's sort of like the tariffs, right?
yeah. It's exactly like that. And it makes me think back to in the first term when the administration was in this confrontation with North Korea. And our worry on the inside is that there wasn't any clear planning for what came next. Donald Trump was pushing out tweets like fire and fury against Kim Jong-un, and we're going to go to war. And the result is, as I ended up, getting permission from DHS to go out and talk about publicly, was that it was the first time since that department was created that we had to effectively do real-time planning for the possibility of nuclear war on the U.S. homeland, because the president was driving this thing to the brink, and we were worried that was not happening with any consideration of starting a security spiral and ending up, the United States ending up inadvertently in a war. And I think we're seeing a replay of that, and hopefully cooler heads will prevail. But you saw it with the brazenness of Trump's tweets about Iran. And again, I say that as someone who's probably more hawkish than a lot of people are on Iran in the MAGA movement or around the president.
I mean, you worked for George W. Bush. You actually got involved in DHS because what you saw on 9/11, right? I mean, that was
That's
a
right.
big part of the reason that you got into public service.
That's right. And I think we face a very grave danger from the Iranian regime. And I think there are a lot of things that regime could do asymmetrically to hurt the United States, from terrorist attacks to cyber attacks to direct strikes on U.S. facilities overseas. There's a lot of danger. And if you don't game these things out ahead of time and have a thoughtful process of how you're going to handle a conflict like this, you can get caught off guard. And really dangerous things can happen. And right now, I think the administration is exposing the U.S. homeland to a lot of various security threats that apparently haven't been considered in advance. And by the way, the administration has been hell-bent on focusing almost all DHS resources towards immigration and not toward protecting against these nation-state threats. And that's left us vulnerable.
Got it. So what do you think is the biggest fear right now from your friends inside of the administration?
Well, on this conflict, I think the fear is that the United States could get hit with some sort of attack, and then we'll almost be stuck into a direct military confrontation with Iran. I mean, right now there's some degree of optionality, but make no mistake, if God forbid there's a fatal attack on U.S. forces overseas or a terrorist attack tied to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps here in the homeland, there will be so much popular anger that Donald Trump will have fewer options. He won't be able to
Like
choose
a
not to
September
retaliate.
11th attack, essentially.
Precisely.
Okay.
And that's, I think, the big worry in this conflict at the moment. And, if there had been a little bit more forethought on how to handle this, we might not be in that situation. But it seems to be very fluid at the moment. And I think that's what folks are concerned about. And there's one other thing that I would add, and Terry, you know this too, because these people. There are a number of former officials who have been directly threatened by the Iranian regime for assassination. People like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton and others. Some who are a little bit better publicly known, and a whole host of others who are not. Donald Trump, at the beginning of this administration, revoked security protection for a number of these people. And now I worry very, very much that some of these individuals are rising to the top of Iran's target list of ways they could punish the United States. And this is very serious. These are real people, real human lives, folks with families. And, Trump has now put them in very grave danger. And to my knowledge, none of those individuals have received renewed protection amidst this current situation.
It's interesting because I was also swept up in a Iran hack, actually, when they hacked Trump's campaign and his lawyers. They tried to get into my computer. They didn't. It was like a phishing attempt. I was among a few other journalists. They sent me some very, like, I wouldn't say top secret, but the kind of documents that would only be exchanged between a lawyer and their client, like attorney-client privilege documents. I didn't know that I was being contacted by Iran until the FBI put out a story saying this person under the name Robert is really an Iranian attempt at hacking the Trump campaign and his attorneys and everything. And yeah, I got swept up into all that. I almost published, and it was really kind of a scary moment for me too, just to know that I had been sort of targeted in some way. They were clearly trying to see my communications with the Trump administration, the Trump campaign at the time.
Well, I'm glad you focus on cyber, because just for a second, this is another place where I think to a lot of people, cyber attacks are really amorphous, and they don't see the grave danger, because we haven't, fortunately, as a country, wound up in a situation where a cyber attack has sucked us into a shooting war. But there are things that foreign adversaries could do that would have exceptionally grave consequences for the American people. Just as a hypothetical, imagine a regime like the Iranians shutting down water systems in a major city, shutting down power this week in Chicago, where the temperature is going to hit 96 degrees. People die when the air conditioning goes out during massive heat waves. There are things that the bad guys can do that would have enormous repercussions for the United States and a lot of foreign adversaries that potentially have that capability.
And let's not forget that President Trump fired a large number of people who deal with that in the National Security Council after being advised by Laura Loomer that they were neocons with, prior associations to Dick Cheney, et cetera. This was fascinating, Miles. I'd love to have you back. I feel like I've learned so much. I still can't get over the fact that you were basically told to break the law by the president with the promise to be pardoned, essentially.
Well, and that's, I think of a harbinger of things to come. So, the justice system, nonprofit groups, watchdogs, independent journalists, I think are going to be watching very closely what happens in the weeks and months ahead, because we're truly ripe at the moment for acts of corruption that could further erode the guardrails of democracy.
Thanks so much for watching the show. Please like, subscribe, share it with your friends. I want to thank Miles for joining. And I want to thank my producers, Eric Abenate, my booker, Jane Fusco, who made this all happen, and my team. Please subscribe to my channel, The Red Letter, also to Miles, who is new to Substack as well. We're both just starting out on this venture. So appreciate all the support you can give us as we try to keep going in this new direction.
Thank you, Tara.
Cheers.